Cool. Folks, welcome to another episode of Better You. Actually, I met this amazing guy, Josh, through LinkedIn, and he reached out to me to talk about something really, really interesting, which I sort of talk about indirectly, directly. I follow a lot of Adam Grant's posts and talk about the toxic work culture, employment. And this is where I want to have a more detailed conversation about Josh thought leadership when it comes to employment. Josh, over to you, and let's see what you have to
Yeah,
say.
Neeraj, thanks for connecting and thanks for having me on the show. I'm so glad that we're here doing this. Yeah, you're absolutely right that we are talking about the future of work and how it's shifting. And the reason why is because me and my co-author Deborah Perry Pashoni have co-authored a book, and the title is the bold statement: "Employment is dead," which is very interesting. We pitched Harvard Business Review Press with the title, not thinking that they would keep it, thinking that they would try and do something a little bit more watered down. It's Harvard, but they kept it, and it's been 2 years in the making. And the book is here in January. We're really excited about it. But the argument that we make is that the current model for work is not keeping up with the ever-evolving needs of the modern workforce, and that emerging technologies are going to provide an ecosystem for workers that is more preferable than your traditional 9 to 5. More preferable because it gives you more flexibility. It gives you the autonomy that you want to make decisions. And so that's what we're really excited about. We essentially say the traditional models of employment are no longer keeping up, and it just doesn't it. Let me ask you this, right? You do this
Sure.
all the time. Don't you think it's crazy that we know the stats show 79% of workers are either disengaged or actively not engaged, and no one's talking about it or no one cares? It's just workers are unhappy. That's just how life is. That's just how it needs to be. And we're just okay with that. Like, do you not see that as a huge problem?
I do. And you know what? Uh, I actually want to get to the step number one. How did you start? But let me just get to the weeds right away, because this is amazing conversation. Because I work with so many technical founders and early stage startups, and I think pandemic. Not I think we strongly believe the pandemic has totally destroyed, in a good way or in a bad way. It depends on the employee versus employer, the work culture, the way we see work. So, question I have for you, getting into the weeds: are you in the favor of 4 days work week, or keep as it is the way things are?
It's a great question. I honestly think it's the wrong question. The question,
But
because that's from an employer standpoint, and the battle
yeah,
has been: do we RTO or not? Do we 4 day a week or not? And it highlights the power dynamics of, I'm the employer, I set the rules, I employ you, and you as the employee have to do exactly what I say. You have to come in 9 to 5. You have to be in the office 5 days a week. And they set the terms of the employment, which are not always preferable to the employee, but the benefit they get out of it is pretty good, right? At least I can buy a house. At least I have money to pay for food. At least I have all of my needs met in order to pay for the cost of living. So, of course, I will comply to your 9 to 5 because the benefits are so good, right? Well, that is not the case anymore, especially for Gen Z, who is entering the workforce. And by the way, they've done everything right. They have gone to school for 4 years, taken on tens of thousands of dollars of debt with the guarantee that they will have a job, they can pay that off, and they can earn a decent living. Well, that promise is kind of falling apart. And they are questioning whether giving 9 to 5 every single day to this organization is going to be a waste of my time, because I'd rather be living, because I can't even afford to live, or do I have to take on 2 jobs? And so I don't think the question is necessarily, hey, is a 4-hour work week going to save us? The whole entire book is about, there's a whole new set of expectations that are not being met. And if you can't meet them, the workforce is going to leave in mass.
I'm so excited to go back to the book and what you guys have done, but I do want to share a personal experience. So I live right in the heart of San Francisco, and I bought the property in 2020 January, right before the pandemic. I bought a condo, and a lot of people moved out. My condo price dropped by 10%. It recovered a little bit, but still down. But then what I have noticed in last year and a half, lot of Gen Zs, lot of young people, they have moved into my neighborhood. And Josh, you won't believe, we had a happy hour, community happy hour, and we have a really nice courtyard out there, and like inside of the building. And me and my partner, we walked into the courtyard, and we saw all these young people. We thought we were in a dorm room. We saw these people enjoying wine, drinks, because it was a community happy hour. And suddenly we saw, like, who are these people? Who are these young people moved in last 6 months into our building? Because mostly our building had, like people like my age. I am 40 plus, 50 plus, 60 plus. But then suddenly now we are seeing people 30 plus or 28 plus. And then I started chatting with these people. They say, yeah, you know what? Our boss said we work for Pinterest, Salesforce, and all these different brands in the city. We didn't want to commute from Menlo Park or Palo Alto, so we just moved back to the city because, going back to your point, and this is going to bring us back to the book I really want to talk about, because the RTO showed up. And now Amazon and Salesforce and many other companies are saying, guys, come back. But I do have to say, before even pandemic, for 15 plus years, I worked from home. I loved it. But then I noticed, as I am going 2 or 3 days a week to the work and meeting founders, meeting people, I have experienced is that the things are more productive. It doesn't have to be 5 days a week. Things are more productive in person because you can get done. You can accomplish so many things because it takes so much time to get meeting calendars invite out, back and forth, and so on. So we'll come back to this topic. Let's talk about your book.
Yeah, I mean, you are tapping on all the problems that we address in the book, right? Several problems that I want to tease out real quick. The first that you mentioned is RTO is a thing, and some people want to go back, some people don't. But when you look at, first off, the productivity that's lost in working remote is fascinating. It is true that we are inundated with meetings. We are lonely. We are siloed. So there's a lot of elements that are great about getting back into the office. My argument is that we are going to shortly be hacking away at those problems because we are going to have virtual offices. We're going to be working in the metaverse. And I know that's a term that we've largely abandoned, but I am here to say, I think you might have thought the death of the metaverse is largely overstated. There are still a lot of companies who are working on a possible virtual office that is going to fix a lot of those problems. And then going back to the productivity issue, right? You can argue that you are more productive when you are in person because you have those serendipitous connections at the water cooler. You can be more present. You can grab someone right after a meeting and chat with them for 5 minutes rather than having to set up a Zoom meeting and waste a bunch more time. So there's definitely that. The culture question is the one that I want to hone in on, because first off, there's no data that states that remote work is more or less productive than in-office work. We're all waiting for that big study. It isn't here yet. So companies like Amazon are making the decision, you know what, we're just all going to come back. 5 days a week, we're coming back to the office. And we're seeing employees push back against that. You really got to hone in. And I will say this, their excuse, right? Matt Garman, who is the CEO of AWS, said, it's culture. It's a culture problem. We want to have that culture. And the employees are like, well, the culture piece only existed because I had to come to the office. And because I'm in the office, I want, it to be a nice place to be. However, if I don't have to come to the office and I don't have to play this superficial culture game with you anymore, then I'm going to choose other things, which is, I'll work when I need to work and I'll be with my family when I need to be with my family. And so I think the whole idea of culture is taking a whole new meaning, and we need to figure out what that looks like and what that feels like.
Interesting point, because transactional relationships with the employer versus more emotionally attached. So I was talking to one of the very young employee here in our building, And she mentioned that she likes to go back to work because she has a lot of work friends, because she does not have friends outside of work. And I think which is fine, but that's the only reason she shows up. But in her previous job, she was a consultant, so it was very transactional. All she did is 8 to 4, 9 to 5, and then walked away, and then spent time alone in the weekend, then showed up for the work. But Josh, I still want to revisit the future of employment. Your book, you and your co-author is talking about that there is something needs to be changed. So I would like to draw the comparison between what we have today and what you folks are marching in for towards the future. So what's missing in today's way of the employment?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I love hearing your experiences in San Francisco, right? Because traditionally that's a very expensive place to live. It is the tech hub of the world, if you will, and so there's a lot around. Back in the day, pre-pandemic, the engagement efforts were, let's have a really cool office space. Let's have Google bikes that you can ride around on. Let's cater lunch every single day. Let's do all of these kind of traditional engagement issues. And that worked for a time. Post-pandemic, we're seeing that those efforts aren't as exciting to employees anymore. So if you really do care about employee engagement, more particularly employee experience, what experiences are you designing for employees that let them work at their best? It is the question that we're trying to answer. And when you look at traditional employment, something that was established in the Industrial Revolution, where you were a button pusher, your job was to press this button, and a manager's job was to make sure that everyone was pressing their buttons in the most efficient way possible. When we apply those same principles to the age of information, and especially the age of artificial intelligence, it's slowing us down and it's keeping us small. And we're not allowing these students who are, they are overeducated, they are smart, they have learned how to make decisions, they have learned how to reason, and we are putting them in, so they're leaving college and then we're putting them in the corporate space and we're teaching them how to push buttons. It's unfulfilling work. It's caused a disengagement epidemic, and employers have not yet honed in on why that's a problem and how to fix it. I mean, we have an entire generation of employees with new expectations coming into the workforce, and one, they're either not getting hired because companies feel like they're lazy or entitled, or two, they have new expectations and they're not going to comply, like we saw with millennials. What do we do with that, right? How do we fix that? Traditional employment is not the answer. It's starting to leverage the distributed workforce. It's hiring people out of the gig economy. It's letting people work on projects that excite them across many different elements of the company. So that's kind of more of what we get into in the book, and I'm happy to chat more about that, but would love to hear your reaction.
No, I would love to chat about what you guys are talking about, the technology stuff in the book, but I do want to talk about something very important, because it's very clear that employees, workforce, they have accepted the fact that it's going to be a hybrid work, either 3 days, 4 days. I don't know how 5 days a week is going to work out. You know, a lot of churn is happening at AWS or Amazon. I want to talk about leadership. So there are two people. There are two parties involved in this conversation. You have an employer, you have a manager, you have a leader, CEO, CTO, whoever your manager is, and then there are people like me, people like you, or other people who are listening to this who are employees. So when it comes to leadership, and when it comes to the emotional intelligence of this individual or of this team who's saying, come back 5 days a week or come back 3 days a week, have you guys talked about the leadership skills an individual should be developing to handle this hybrid or full-time RTO?
Yeah, it's a great question. I speak to a lot of HR audiences, so I'm trying to decide, should we lean into where the rubber hits the road, or should we take it to, this is actually what leadership looks like in the future, like, which feels like a more radical approach to what we experience today. I will say this. Leadership today takes the form of like a centralized organization with a few people at the top who hold all of the power to make decisions. And these are the CEOs, this is the C-suite, these are upper level managers who decide where the company needs to go, and they steer the ship in that direction. And consequently, frontline employees have to get in line and do it that way, or they will be left behind. We'll fire you and we'll get someone who is ready to row in the same direction as we are. What we write about heavily in the book is the democratization of work. A decentralized workforce, by comparison, is actually void of traditional leadership. So a mid-level manager who guides a team, who sets the rules and tells us where we need to go because they received that from on high, it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, we can flatten the organization and we can build what's called a DAO, or a decentralized autonomous organization. A DAO works based off of lines of code. It is a smart contract that the group of individuals who are in the DAO decide upon beforehand, and they all move forward making decisions collectively. This is the collective wisdom of the participants rather than the one individual up top who is the leader making the decisions for us. It's almost like you are distributing decision-making power into the organization itself. So I would argue, for the sake of argument, that we don't need leaders in the same way that we needed them in the past. Management is just a tool that we invented, and we don't need it anymore.
Absolutely love what you just said, because I am a huge fan of enterprise blockchain. And what you just said, distributed ledger, everybody has seat at the table and they can vote for it, and then they can decide together rather than, the master slave architecture, because my audience is very technical. So you have a master says something, then all the slaves, they follow, distributed computing. And but where the blockchain comes in, and which is exactly what you're saying, DAO, that we're gonna build this distributed architecture where people come in, everybody has a voice and they can raise their opinion, and then based on that. But see, the challenge I have now, and as you said, you talked to a lot of HRs, and HRs, they do run a lot of surveys, a lot of voting. They do reach out to employees, and where does that data go? Do these leaders, the C-suites, do they even act on that data? Like if let's say 80% of the workforce is saying, no, we do not want to come 5 times a day, or sorry, 5 times a week back to office. We would like to come for 3 days a week. But again, somebody on the top decides, no, it has to be 5 days. So what happened to that 80%, the audience who voted no to 5 days?
Honestly, if the audience doesn't want that, they should go work in a distributed environment on Discord. You've highlighted something important, right? Which is the relationship that we have with work. The relationship has been kind of this slave master mentality where you tell us what to do, we go do it, crack the whip. And that is a terrible relationship. And we've evolved, right, to the point where it's like, oh, we're not screaming at you, but we do send out surveys and we do ask you how you're doing. And I just want to remind people that that's not a very strong relationship. That's not, and is it a decent enough relationship where employees want to be honest? Have you created a trusting environment where they're going to tell you honestly? Because what it feels like is we are just passing information along to the higher ups so they can make decisions on our behalf, and we don't get any say in that. So when I am a CEO and I mandate 5 days in the office and you have to do it because that's just how things are done, is that really the work environment that today's employees want to work in? So we actually named our institute the Work 3 Institute because we're breaking from that paradigm completely. And we are talking about, hey, if employees don't want to work in a certain way, let's not make them. If they don't want to work on a certain project, let's not make them. In fact, we should create an environment run off of the blockchain, right? Let's talk about that. It feels like we can nerd out a little bit about the blockchain. The blockchain is designed, it's a trustless trust system, which is fascinating because trust is at an all-time low within organizations right now. Employees do not trust employers because they don't feel like employers have their best interest at heart. But what if we had this trustless trust system where you can get your work done and it's already hard coded on the blockchain. For example, the project that you're working on or the skills that you have are verified on the blockchain, and you can pick up projects that excite you, and you can work in ways that feel right to you based on your preferences. Now we're not managing time spent at the office or time spent at your desk. We are managing output. How many projects have you completed? How much work have you done? And if we really get to a point where we can do it that way, where we can monitor and measure the things that matter most, all of a sudden the trust kind of comes back. I don't have to tell you exactly where you need to be and what you need to do. So long as you're doing your work, get it done.
Yeah. So, okay. So basically, you're saying I can choose what I want to work on, and don't measure based on outcome. Measure based on output. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That is actually a debatable topic, because I'm a huge fan of outcome, because see, you can write 1,000 lines of code, but if that code is shitty, it doesn't really work, that's output. That's a bad output. But if you can write, let's say, 500 lines of code, and that code really, really works, and that you can put into production, that is an outcome that you are, let's say you spend 5 hours writing something versus 2 hours writing something. In 2 hours, you delivered better product. That's a better outcome. So I think employers, they do want to stay very heavily focused on the outcome rather than looking at the 1,000 lines of code, which is the output, right? So I think we have a little bit disagreement on that part. Also, I think if an employer is listening to this, he or she is going to say, great, listen, we have our roles and responsibilities, because at the end of the day, we have to deliver the revenue to the Wall Street, or if a private company, new to investors or VCs. So we are hiring people based on their skills so that they can work on certain tasks, rather than they come in and they say, hey, I don't want to work on this. I will work on other things.
Yeah, no, I love that you're highlighting this. Let's take it even a step further, right? Because you're kind of looking at the gig economy almost. We have this task that needs to be done, and we can either bring in a full-time employee to do it, or we could do it even cheaper by hiring a contractor. And so, there's a great book called The Distributed Workforce and Workforce Ecosystems. And essentially, they talk about how you should take a look, employers, like half of the work being done at your organization is distributed. It's not done by the full-time employees, it's done by the contractors. When you take it a step further into a DAO ecosystem, you still have kind of that 9-to-5 worker. We call them core contributors, but a circle outside of that is a bounty hunter. And how it works is we have a let's say, lines of code that need to be written for the organization. Instead of handing that to our internal team, which we've already verified, we already trust them, what if you put that project out into the world in a, let's call it, gig economy 2.0, where people not just apply for that work, but they start doing the work because they're already a verified vendor on the blockchain. They start doing the work immediately. And if someone's working on that same project and doing it better than the other, you're obviously going to choose that product. And so now you're getting compensated as a contractor, as a bounty hunter, based on the value you contribute to the organization, not the time that you contribute, if that makes sense. So in a way, like,
It does.
You're definitely right on the outcomes.
It definitely makes sense, and definitely looks like the title of the book, you guys are changing the employment style, totally resonates your way of thinking, because you're saying that why do I have to put, I'm just going to say it, right? Why do I have to put a human being in a cage of this 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 and tell this human being who has full creativity to do so many things, but we're going to put this person in a cage, and this person is going to just work on 10, 15, 20 things and then walk out, go enjoy life. Instead of doing that, you're saying that we should actually create a more open environment where people can come in. They say, hey, actually, I am a 10 out of 10 in this. Let me go fix this problem, rather than figuring something else out and trying to fix the problem, which I don't know how to fix it.
That's right.
So yeah, I see your point. I mean, look, it's I don't know how it's going to get implemented. I don't know if you guys talked about this, how you and your co-author Deborah sees happening. Have you guys talked about this topic at all?
I mean, we've got plenty of case studies. early case studies I would mention in the book,
Please.
because that's where we get to, right? You talk to a modern day leader and they're like, all sounds great, it all sounds utopian, but where does the rubber hit the road? How do we change? What do we do today? We have a 13-step roadmap on how to help you get there. But an interesting example would be a company called Juicebox DAO. Juicebox DAO essentially is a Discord server. So if you're on Discord, you might understand that Discord started off as kind of a great way for gamers to chat one with another. But it kind of evolved
Yeah.
into this like hipster Slack kind of tool where now you can go on there and you can create a community, and this community can talk with each other and they can do pretty much anything and everything they want. Well, a lot of companies, a lot of these DAOs have gravitated towards Discord because now you can create a community of individuals who all have talents and skills and abilities, and you can say, we want to go here. And instead of saying, let's go, I'm the leader, everyone grab a paddle and let's start rowing, we put it out to the organization. How should we get there? Who can contribute? How much do you want to contribute? And you as an individual contributor get to decide how much or how little you want to contribute to this company. You can mix and match several streams of income through several different DAOs. And there are certain individuals who are like, I'm all in, let's go. We distribute tokens to those individuals so they have more voting power on what happens at the organization. Whereas if you're just putting in a couple hours a day, you'll have a different distribution of tokens. You still get voting power on what happens at this organization, but Juicebox DAO is a perfect example of a decentralized autonomous organization that is generating value based on their ecosystem rather than their workforce.
Wow, that's I have to look that up. That's actually very interesting. That actually raises the question of the safety net.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really love Nassim Taleb, and he said it that there are three addictions in life: cocaine, carbohydrates, and the third is monthly salary, a rat race. We all are addicted to it. Safety net that, hey, every month I get this money. I'm going to design my lifestyle based on this. So Josh, I love what you said. I'm a huge fan of blockchain, and I do see, first, I think the adoption is going to be really, really difficult because what you just explained, the Juicebox example, it disrupts the whole idea of employee and employers. And I think implementing that at the large scale where each employer and each employee will start thinking that way, I don't think that's feasible in the long-term future even. Now, that brings back to what I was saying, that how do you guys see the adoption, or have you guys talked about the idea of putting together this framework or this implementation of this whole idea that, okay, employers and employees can read this book and they can go and bounce some ideas internally? Because what I see the problem is a safety net. If I don't work today, for example, based on the architecture that you're explaining, the DAO-based architecture, tokens, and you work more, you get more tokens, you work less, you get less tokens. But there is no fixed salary coming in where I can go have a break of 4 hours, then work until 1 a.m. to compensate my work.
It's a great question. And complicating it even further, or the challenges that you need to overcome, are that like healthcare, especially in the United States, is tied to your full-time employment. So if you're not full-time employed, there's additional costs. There's, a freelancer tax where, if you're solopreneur, you have to pay more in taxes. There's a lot of barriers to entry because we have tried to keep it this way. Society, call it the government, call it society. We have designed cost of living to be around having a full-time job. We've designed school to be around having a full-time job. And that is a safe thing. Having income that comes in, being able to provide for your children, that's something that's extremely attractive. What you give up, though, is something we rarely talk about. And something that I find so fascinating as I watch Gen Z come into the workforce. And that's fulfillment. Are you fulfilled at work? Do you have job satisfaction, or have you sold your soul to the corporate rat race in a sense, right? So a lot of individuals are saying, one, the golden handcuffs are not as exciting anymore because even though I'm giving you all my time, I still can't afford the cost of living. And two, why would I come work for you when I'm doing such terrible work that doesn't engage me, that doesn't excite me? I'm not getting it. The argument I would make to your argument is, well, what if you made less money? Sure, but now all of a sudden, you're doing work that you're absolutely passionate about, and you want to be doing that, and you want to be spending your time doing it it's a radical, it's so simple, but it's such a radical shift in the way that we've designed work to be that it doesn't even cross our minds.
My God, that reminds me this personal experience I had. I flew to Atlanta for a conference, and for one of the Fortune 10 companies, one of the leaders was on the stage, and she mentioned somebody asked about the challenges as part of the technology, and she said as part of the technology, the biggest challenge this company, I won't name, but they're facing is to retain the young employees, because young employees, what you're saying, they want better technology, they want innovation, they want better work culture, they want freedom, they want to, as you were saying, they want to work on stuff they are really good at it because that's how they grew up. And now once they come in to this big company, it has a whole red tape process and so many other things, and in 3 months or so they always leave, these young employees. So now this organization at the time, which was 2017, at the time they were working towards building that transformation where they can retain Gen Zs, they can retain young people because they are the future, right? So now,
Sure.
coming back to the topic there, you're discussing the whole RTO, because it's still, especially in San Francisco, it's a huge topic because Salesforce is asking people to come back. Amazon has already asked it. I can see the difference in last 1 year. City, San Francisco was during the lunchtime, it was literally dead, not totally dead, but literally dead. But now when I go and walk during the lunchtime, sometimes I can see people are just floating around looking for lunch, sandwiches, early wine, and so on. So the spirit is coming back because people are coming back to work, right? Now, so Josh, as part of the closing, where can we find your book? I know you have a book on Amazon. Is that the best way to get the book?
Yeah, we'll just drop the link in the show notes. We are taking pre-sales right now, so definitely grab your copy. And stay in touch with us on social. At Josh Drain is my LinkedIn, my TikTok, my YouTube, my Instagram. I'm a daily poster. I read all of my DMs, so reach out.
Is this JOSHDREAN,
That's
right?
correct.
Awesome. Josh, as part of the closing, anything you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of skeptics, right, of what the future of work looks like. And honestly, a lot of these technologies still have to prove themselves. So I could be full of shit and you guys could be like, all right, that was a waste of my time. But what it always goes back to for me is that employees are unhappy at work. And they are staying put right now because we are in the quote unquote great stay, but we won't be in the great stay forever. What happens when Great Resignation 2.0 comes along? To me, it's not going to be jumping from job to job. It's going to be jumping from your toxic culture in the employment world that you hate to a decentralized model for work where you get the flexibility, you get the autonomy, you get the ownership that you want and need. You get to work with like-minded individuals who are passionate about the work that they're doing in an environment that excites you. And so I just want to ask all employers, all leaders out there, how are you engaging these disgruntled employees? Because if you're doing nothing right now, it's already over. I'm sorry to say it, you will not win top talent as these emerging technologies continue to create more options for work in ways that make sense.
Absolutely love it, man. Thank you, Josh. Very nice meeting you.
Neeraj, thank you.
See you. Bye.